Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Dan Cartalicchio. I want to welcome you to another segment of Destination Health Podcast, Finding Function in a Dysfunctional World. I'm very excited about our conversation today. Okay, I think this is an important topic and one that I think is not discussed enough. And I think that this is important. So, Sarah, welcome to the program. I am very excited to discuss this topic with you. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm just really excited to be here talking with you about this topic and sharing it, with your audience. And I think it's just such a pleasure to be here with you. And thank you for having me.
Well, the honor and the pleasure is always ours. And those of us that are in our field, functional nutrition, functional medicine, clinical nutrition, we're usually here, or just about all of us are here because of some type of personal experience where we've just changed our careers, right? Where we've just here and now it's just here, right? Isn't that true?
Absolutely.
So Sarah has a passion for restoring health that has taken her along a path from a practicing RN to walking away from her conventional nursing career to become a certified functional diagnostic nutrition and breast implant illness and detox expert. She believes the solution to reversing breast implant illness is about more than just the explant, and that we all need to take personal responsibility, which is very true, for restoring our health by addressing root causes that contribute to chronic illness, such as toxicity, infections, traumas. Sarah's Pain to Purpose is using her personal experience along with her understanding about the body to guide women through the sea of misinformation about breast implant illness in hopes of finding their path and true and lasting healing. Sarah, welcome to the program. Breast implant illness. What's going on? You have a personal experience in this. Let's start off right with the elephant in the room. What happened?
Yeah. It's such a long story. I'm gonna start.
We're here. My listeners, really, our motto is to motivate, educate, and inspire. And my listeners will sit and they will listen, because I find this captivating.
Yeah, and I think it's important to share the story aspect of it too, because someone may see themselves in it and it may become that light bulb moment, and so I'm really happy to share. And I think this is such an important topic, really, to discuss with any aspect of women's health, because there are millions of women who receive breast implants for a variety of reasons. And, unfortunately, many of them are just unaware of the dangers associated with them. And I believe the last time I looked it up, there were more than 400,000 breast augmentation procedures being performed in the US every single year.
That's just a significant number, and I kind of remember, when all of this, because I'm old, I kind of remember when all of this started to come about, 70s, 60s and breast implants and so forth and so on. I've always wanted to ask why would you want a breast implant?
Yeah. Well, I think we have society to thank for that.
Mm-hmm.
A number of reasons, but so I'll tell you my why.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of goes back to childhood for me. And I like to tell this part of my story because I think it took me a long time to pinpoint it and to kind of really discover where this desire came from. And when I really sat down and thought about it as a part of my own emotional healing, and learning to love myself and accept myself the way I was created, that was a part of it, is really identifying what was the underlying cause for that decision that I made. And so for me, when I don't even know, I might have been maybe 10, somewhere in there.
Really interesting.
I know someone really important in my life who is still I'm very close with to this day. And I know she did not mean any harm whatsoever, but it was unintentional and it did harm me. She said to me, you're going to be 4'11", just like me. But don't worry, because you're going to have the Johnson boobs. And I never got the Johnson boobs. And my mother, who is I'm built just like her, she's very small chested, and I saw her teased a lot by my family members who did have the
Hmm.
Johnson boobs.
Hmm.
And I didn't want to be her. I didn't want that to be me. I wanted to be in the Johnson boob club.
Hmm.
I wanted to feel worthy, beautiful, like a woman,
Hmm.
and to look a certain way and feel a certain way.
Hmm.
And so I think that set the stage for later on in life making that choice. And as kids, we're just little sponges, we're absorbing the world around us and trying to make meaning
Right.
of it all. Right. And so that one moment in time is something that caused a ripple effect in my life.
Hmm.
And anyway, I just think that's so interesting. I think we should be very careful about what we say around our kids or to our kids, because it can impact some other part of their life down the line, in a way that really changes everything. So fast forward down the road, and I've been working night shift as a nurse for probably 5 years. I for the past couple of years before that was really, really into fitness.
Hmm.
Probably around 28-ish, I started becoming really hardcore with fitness. It started with
Hmm.
P90X, and then it was into bodybuilding. And I hired a couple of different personal trainers who worked with bikini competitors.
Hmm.
I personally never wanted to compete because that's just not who I am. I don't like that kind of attention on me.
Hmm.
But I wanted to get in the best shape of my life that
Right.
before I got to 30. That was my goal. It was all about my outward appearance. It wasn't about health. The typical bodybuilder diet is just not, it's not healthy. It's more
Hmm.
about meeting macros, not necessarily about what you're putting in your body and what it's doing for you.
Hmm.
And so I would eat, following my macros, I would have, Skinny Cow ice cream sandwiches and a protein shake after my workouts. Or I would have Captain Crunch and a protein shake after my workouts because it fell within my macros.
Right.
So you
Right.
get
Right.
the picture.
Yeah, I get it.
So night shift, really killing myself at the gym, and I was probably overdoing it with cardio as well, as many women in that industry do,
Hmm.
and just adding so much stress. And then I decided I'm going to take this to the next level and finally get the breast implants, the breasts that I've always wanted.
Hmm.
And it's just an area that I always was very self-conscious about. I never felt like I was enough, even though my husband loved me just the way I was. He had
Hmm.
no desire for me to do this. He actually tried to encourage me not to do it.
So he was like, no, you know what, Sarah, let's not do this. Let's not go.
Yeah,
You're beautiful. I love you for who you are. This is not what I want.
right.
It's kind of like, if this is what you want, I'm still going to love you, but you don't
Mhm.
have to do this.
Right. So there was a little bit of pushback, even like he didn't really want me to do it, but
Hmm.
it was something I had wanted for as long as I could remember, right? Going back to that 10-year-old
Right.
version of me. And so he finally gave in and was like, all right, I support your decision if this is what you want. So I went ahead with it. And I remember as I was going under, like as soon as I started to feel like I was going under, I started thinking, oh my God, what am I doing?
Hmm. You have those
Yeah.
second guessing yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I woke up and everything went fine,
Hmm.
and no one told me this was a possibility that I could experience, but I was very full of regret and I didn't like what I saw. And the thing I struggled with, it wasn't that I didn't like the breasts, it was just like I was looking in the mirror and I didn't see myself anymore.
Right.
I saw a completely different body, and it wasn't the body that I was used to looking at in the mirror for the past, 15 years.
Right.
And so there was this disconnect emotionally, with who I am versus what I was seeing. And that's kind of where it all started for me from that mental emotional side of things.
Hmm.
It took me a good 3 or 4 months to finally get to a place where I was okay with it. And I actually really did love them at that point. I was really happy, but no one told me that was possible, that I might feel that way. And it was a struggle
Hmm.
to get over.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so you had the surgery, and I want to say thank you for being vulnerable, for all of them, all of the listeners today, because I think it's important. And one of the reasons why, people like to come to the Destination Health podcast is because we have people such as yourself on, and they are vulnerable, and they have a story, and they want to discuss
Mhm.
that story. And so you went through this whole mental emotional thing. It's kind of like it's an imposter type of a syndrome. Who am I? What happened? Why did I do this? And I just don't look like myself at this particular
Mhm.
juncture. And I just don't want to be here. But then you kind of got into it and you said, all right, you know what? I'm happy. They're here. What am I, I'm not gonna say no, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're gonna get the explant surgery 6 months later.
Yeah.
So where did you go from here with this now? After about 6 months, what happened from there?
Well, at 6 months was around the time I started developing symptoms.
So it
And
was right away, Sarah.
yeah.
So there wasn't like you've had them for, you didn't have your implants for, 2 years
Decades. No, or
before,
years.
3 years, and then there was a rupture or something like this. It just 6 months, you're like, I don't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Tell us more about that.
Well, so obviously I was still on night shift and I thought, maybe I just need to get off night shift. That's probably my issue. But I was experiencing a lot of fatigue, brain fog, difficulty concentrating, difficulty with word recall, difficulty just short-term memory things. Like I would have to read the same thing probably a dozen times to really understand it. And even then I couldn't regurgitate it. Um, it was just a lot of mental, cognitive things. And then I started not being able to lose weight very easily. I was putting on weight very easily. I was very inflamed and puffy.
Mhm.
I had dry skin. I had some acne developing. I had some sleep issues developing, some menstrual irregularities. And I went to the doctor. At the time, I went to the person, a doctor that worked at the hospital that I worked for.
Mhm.
And so conventional medicine, and he did a little bit of lab work. I went in thinking maybe this is my thyroid. And so we did some
Mhm.
thyroid testing and hormone testing, and everything came back quote unquote normal, of course.
Mhm.
And he told me, maybe you just need to, low sex drive was another one. He told me
Mhm.
maybe you just need to spice up your sex life, or maybe you need to like talk to someone, have, do some counseling around this issue. And
And you're
so I
sitting
thought,
there like, wait a second. I've heard this 1,000 times, a million times before, right? Because let me fix my glasses. It's all in your head,
right.
right? Right. It's all in your head. So you might as well, you know, you know, hey, listen, you got breast implants. I mean, you should feel more feminine, if you will, right? Right? Is
Right.
that kind of
Right.
like the thought process? And so maybe you just need to spice things up just a little bit more. Oh boy.
Yeah. So I knew that obviously that wasn't what I was expecting or wanting to hear. And I knew that there had to be another answer. And so I kept pursuing that. And I ended up reaching out to my mom's functional medicine practitioner or naturopath. And I
Hmm.
said, hey, I've been dismissed. Here are my lab results. I know I have Hashimoto's. My antibodies are in the 500s.
Hmm.
I have less than optimal hormone production. If I come see you, will you treat me, or am I going to be wasting my time? And she said, you absolutely do have Hashimoto's. Yes, I will treat you. So I went in, saw her for quite some time, and but it was still a Band-Aid approach. It was, instead of using, a lot of prescription drugs, which is what most people end up with, a bunch of labels and drugs. It was kind of allopathy from a
Hmm.
natural
From
perspective,
a
right?
from a naturopathic standpoint, right?
Yeah,
Right.
it was, a pill. It was a supplement for every symptom or a supplement for every issue I was having,
What
rather than looking
I
for.
I hate that, by the way. I have patients, just as a little sidebar, people will spend thousands of dollars, Sarah, and they come in, I'm taking this for this for this, this for this, and this for this. And I'm like, why? Anyway, that just bothers me. That
It
just
does.
bothers me.
Yeah, it's a Band-Aid approach, and I was looking for something deeper. I was looking for, why am I experiencing all of this? What is the
Hmm.
underlying cause? And I wasn't getting what I was looking for from that practitioner either, which is what ended up leading me down the path of becoming an FDN practitioner myself.
Hmm.
I ended up discovering FDN through someone else's podcast. I think it was Sean Croxton, if
Hmm.
you're familiar with him.
Hmm.
And then I just went for it. I looked into it. I was like, all right, this is, I think, what I need to discover what my
Hmm.
problems are, and learn how to heal myself. And so I went through that, and I had a little intuition about this topic from kind of the beginning, close to the beginning. I would think about it. I would do some Google searches about breast implants. And at the time, there was nothing out there. No information showed up. There were no
Hmm.
Facebook groups. There were no websites. There's nothing. I
Right.
found one person on realself.com talking about some symptoms that had developed post breast augmentation. But for me, that wasn't enough to make a drastic decision to take out the implants, you know? So I did, as I was going through the FDN program, I thought, you know what? Well, first of all, I made the decision to do that as a practitioner because I
Hmm.
thought, there must be other people out there going through what I'm going through. If
Right.
I'm going to go through this, I might as well learn how to be a practitioner so that I can help other
Right.
people.
Sure.
Because, when you live it, you can teach it a lot more.
Well, sure. When
Effectively.
you're living it, you're just a more empathetic healer, and you understand more. And I can totally relate. I can totally
Yeah.
relate to that. And you're just looking for answers at this point, right? I mean, this is
Yeah.
just, hey,
Yeah.
listen, I'm not feeling right, and I'm being told to go talk to somebody, and I just don't feel the way I should. And listen, let me find out what's going on, because this route is not really doing anything for me.
Yeah.
And so, I'm going to try this, and I'm going to serve humankind at a higher level. You're a
Yeah.
nurse, you're in the healthcare field anyway. So this is kind of
Mhm.
a natural progression, right?
Yeah, exactly. By that time, I had developed all kinds of new symptoms. So
Wow. What were you
I was
experiencing at that point?
insomnia, night sweats, um, gas, bloating, food sensitivities, irritability, anxiety, air hunger, feeling I could never get a full breath, chest tightness.
Hmm.
The any kind of stimulus felt like too much. It was very overwhelming. So light, sound, chemical sensitivities. My nervous system was just shot. I mean, I couldn't even handle the sound of my husband breathing heavily working out next to me. That was irritating to
Hmm.
my nervous system. And
Interesting.
so, yeah, I had to work out alone. It had to be dead silent. Like I had to stop in between what I was doing and like sit to recover because my heart just felt like it was going to blow out of my chest. And obviously, I shouldn't have continued doing that. Hindsight is 2020, right? Um, but it was still all about the physical appearance at that point. And so I still had some growth work to do. But um, outside of those things, I really struggled in my relationships because of all of that. People just didn't recognize me anymore because I
Hmm.
was so irritable and I was not enjoyable to be around,
Hmm.
and that was because I was suffering and
Hmm.
it felt awful living in my body. I just wanted to jump out of my skin,
Right.
you know. And there were others. A lot. I mean, the brain fog was so bad I could barely get through a sentence because I would forget like every other word. I couldn't remember.
So,
Yeah.
so the question that I'm thinking of, what's causing this now? I mean, you had the
Right.
breast implant, so we can make the correlation, and you're making this correlation at this point in time. Was it silicone? Was it saline? Is there a difference? Because you hear so many different types of things, Sarah, when it comes to this.
Yeah.
Oh, saline, you're fine. There's no issues.
Yeah.
Silicone, you want to stay away from that. I don't know. I mean, what is that? What for you? What was it that brought you to this point? What was that root cause now?
Well, I do believe that the implants were a big factor there, but and this is what I teach people, and I think this is really important. This is key because I think when people discover breast implant illness, of course the light bulb moment, and then it's tunnel vision. This is the cause of all of my symptoms, and the belief is that all I need to do is explant, and I'm going to get better. My body will heal, and while I think there is some truth to that, I think we have to look at things from a bigger picture perspective and
Hmm.
have all of the pieces of the health puzzle, you know, um, to determine what else is going on. And so for
Hmm.
me, I think it was a series of stressors that helped set the stage for the
Hmm.
eventual fall. And I think the breast implants for me were just that straw that broke the camel's back.
Right.
And so before the implants, I had not a single symptom in the world to speak of. I felt like I was in perfect health, even though I was killing myself in the gym and I had a terrible diet and I was drinking alcohol and I was having a good time, you know, and I was working night shift still, and that the stress that plays on the body, you know. So there were multiple stressors, not to mention childhood things, of course, that all
Mhm.
contribute well. Um, but I think it's important to be sure to not focus too much on one aspect, because you're going to be missing the boat.
Mhm.
Chronic illness doesn't typically develop from just one exposure. You know, it's just the toxic overflown bucket,
Right. Sure.
or the stress bucket, whatever you want to call it, right?
Mhm. Yeah, because it's always a multitude of things.
Yeah.
Once that system becomes overwhelmed, it just doesn't function anymore, just like any other system in the body, right? So
Yeah.
if you got to get rid of toxins, I mean, you
Yeah.
know, traditionally trained individuals, I mean, once that, you know, I mean, this is just physiology. Once that becomes, you know, an overload, that system doesn't work anymore. Then it becomes pathological. Now we're into the pathophysiology of it, right?
Right. Exactly. And that's when symptoms develop, you know, not when we're dealing with just a small amount of toxic load.
Hmm.
And, you know, that toxic load starts in utero. It's
Hmm.
not when we're born into the world, it starts in utero. And those things get passed down from generation to generation as, you know, maternal bone and fat tissue are remodeling to build this human,
Hmm.
you know? So, and my mother had a mouthful of amalgams when she was pregnant with me. So, you know, I had sky high levels of mercury when I did testing, and I never had amalgams, but she did. And that's
Yeah.
probably where it came from.
So it seems like what happened is that just one thing led to another, and then when you did this, this was a foreign substance in your body, and you just kind of hit critical overload at that particular juncture, and it was a
Yeah.
situation that your body said, no more, enough, I've had enough, and I'm going to start breaking down.
Mhm.
Are your symptoms very similar to others with this?
They are. People experience a wide range of symptoms, which makes it really difficult to pinpoint, especially if breast implants aren't on your radar.
Hmm. Hmm.
Anything from, I mean, chronic fatigue, cognitive dysfunction, muscle aches and pains, joint pain, hair loss, weight gain, weight loss, low libido, heart palpitations, ringing in the ears, hormone dysregulation, numbness and tingling or cold extremities, body odor changes, so kind of smelling very like toxic things are coming out of
Really?
you, vertigo, frequent urination, sensitivity to light, sound, chemicals, visual disturbances,
Hmm.
GI symptoms, persistent infections that don't seem to clear, chronic cough, difficulty swallowing, feeling like you're choking, chronic inflammation, headaches, dizziness, migraines, mood swings,
Wow.
irritability, anxiety, depression, panic attacks, suicidal thoughts, you know, all of these, which is, I mean, that's a huge number of symptoms. So how do you figure that out? That's really the challenge.
And what I'm thinking of is that you went to do this. I mean, you're getting the opposite of what the outcome was supposed to be. You were
Right.
supposed to say, "Hey, listen, I want, you know, your family's boobs. You want the Johnson boobs, right? And you want to feel a certain way that maybe that gives you the confidence, maybe that gives you that sachet, the savoir faire." And the exact opposite is happening right now at
Oh,
this time,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And so, regardless of whether or not you have the toxic overload and it's leading to like a leaky gut and then anxiety and depression, you're not feeling good about yourself regardless of what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about what your husband is going through. What is he saying to you?
Mhm.
What's going on with him? Because you're married, you always have your partner in mind and so forth. So what was that like?
Oh my God, I feel like this is a whole nother story, but this is another a really important part, I think, because here's what I'll tell you. My husband wrote a blog post for my website that is a message basically from him to other spouses or partners out there.
I saw that by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that is actually my number one read and shared post. Um, And anytime I end up sharing it, it gets just shared like crazy. And people will reach out to me and tell me, how helpful that was to read because, um, partners can't always, I mean, people in general, if unless they're in your shoes and they've been there, they can't understand what you're going through.
Hmm.
No one's really going to understand unless they've been there. And it can be very devastating on relationships because for
Hmm.
me, for
Hmm.
speaking from personal experience, I mean, I was so on edge. Like people just walked on eggshells around
Right.
me,
Right.
and so I wasn't an easy person to be around, let alone be married to. He did the best he could, but like we were navigating this for the first time ever, and we were kind of still in a sense newlyweds. We had only been
Right.
married a couple of years. So imagine going into that and like all of a sudden having all these health issues, and I was just not the same person that I was when he married me.
Yeah.
Um, and so it was a lot of adjusting and learning and coping and, trying to work through how to communicate with each other in a better way. And him, trying to learn how to understand what I'm going through and what I need to do because there's a huge financial cost to all of this,
Yeah, there is. Right. I understand.
huge.
Yeah. Yes.
And, going from that place of, oh, man, I did this to myself, feeling that way about it, um, to learning how to accept and love yourself and just move forward and stop looking back because you can't change what happened. And so there's just a lot of kind of navigating through all of that.
Wow.
And he has always been obviously supportive of me getting back my health, but the strain that it put in our marriage through the process was a lot. It was a
It was a
lot.
lot.
Yeah. And when we got to the explant part, that part of the journey was really beautiful because it was like the culmination of all this
Hmm.
that we've been through, all of the stress, all of the trauma, all of it was gonna finally be culminating to hope what we hoped
Right.
was an end to it all.
Right.
And so we kind of got to a place where we really connected and bonded on a very deep emotional level because of the experience. So it has the opportunity. You can go two ways, one of two ways with it, down the road
Right.
of it breaking you or down the road of it making your relationship stronger if you can roll with the punches and learn from it all and learn and grow together and learn how to be better for each other.
Right. And that's important for the listeners today because you're in love and you're going to be there for your significant other, for your spouse, and to help them out, because it can happen to him in something he wanted to do, whatever that was. And so
Yeah.
it just happened to be you. Okay, what are you going to do? So it's fine. And so, you went from I did this to myself. Now you have this self-love. Now you have this self-esteem. I want something more. And now you have a husband that's really behind you and that's helping you out and so forth. And that's extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
That is
Yeah.
extremely important. Thank you again
And
for another personal share.
yeah,
Boy, I
and
think
not just
I
that.
think I'm going to be listening to this podcast over and over again. It's like, so was the implants leaking, or did it leak right away for you? It was just a foreign object? What was that happened?
Well, my implant, I wish I had them on my desk. I don't. They're in the closet. But if you saw them, they look perfect. They don't look like they have a single problem, defect, rupture, leak, anything like that.
Mhm.
So just because they look perfect doesn't mean that they're not negatively impacting the body.
Mhm.
And it has been shown in studies that the silicone gel implants will bleed at body temperature. So that's called gel bleed.
Mhm.
And so you don't have to have a rupture for the contents of the implants to be, you know, leaking out into the body.
Mhm.
And the things that go into manufacturing these implants, they're incredibly toxic. So it's not
Mhm.
just the silicone. The silicone, of course, is incredibly toxic all by itself. And we
Absolutely.
are living in a world where silicone is pervasive in the environment now. It's
Mhm.
basically replaced plastics. In a lot of our personal care products, our cooking products, our food storage
Right.
products, all of those things. A lot of them are silicone based. And what happens when you heat silicone is the same thing that happens when you heat plastic. It leaches out. And that's the reason you don't want to heat your food in plastic. Same
Yeah.
thing with breast implants. When you heat them up, they're leaching their contents into the body. And so the things that are found in these implants are things like cyclohexene, toluene, benzene,
Oh my goodness.
talcum powder, printing ink, metal cleaning acid, and then you have platinum, of course, mercury, tin, lead, all in addition to, and there's probably 40 something different toxic compounds in the implants. So I'm
That's
just
a
listing
significant number of toxins to have. It sounded like an organic chemistry class
right.
that you were talking about, where we knew that we needed to stay away from these compounds and we needed to take care of when we were using them because they were toxic to our bodies. Wow.
Right. Right. And there's some interesting phenomenon that happen too with certain compounds. For instance, silicone, well, platinum is a driver, and
Mm-hmm.
platinum can actually drive silicone into the cells. And that is one, I think, aspect of silicone toxicity or siliconosis or whatever the right term is for that.
Mm-hmm.
That can just magnify the impact that it's having on the body. It's not just like putting some cream on your face that has silicone in it, you know. The platinum in it is driving it into the cells
Mm-hmm.
and creating very sick toxic cells. And so I think that has a huge part of it.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
And then you've got a lot of, dense lymphatic tissue around the breast. So that's the highway,
Right.
the lymph is the highway to move things around the body, moving nutrients to the tissues and then moving toxins out.
Mm-hmm.
So they just get right into the lymph, and people end up with lots of congested lymph nodes, silicone in the lymph nodes. Some people end up having lymph nodes removed because of that, because there isn't a safe way to get it out. And it's a very sticky substance. It's not just like draining an abscess.
No. It's not like you got a little something and it's pouring out. That's a very viscous type of a situation, right?
Right. So there's that chemical aspect, and then there's the aspect of infections and biofilm,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's a whole different side of it, and it makes it even more complicated because you've got the immune system is going to work creating capsule around the implants, which is like scar tissue, and it's the immune system's way of walling those foreign bodies off, and your immune system knows they don't belong there, so it's trying to wall them off to protect you.
Yeah, sure.
So you have that, and within the breast tissue is not sterile, and so there is a possibility for organisms to get in there and start growing and wreaking havoc and creating biofilm around themselves, and then you can have these low-grade chronic infections around that the area of the implants. Of course, with the lymphatics there, things can still migrate as well,
Right.
and the implants can also impact the immune system and how it functions.
That was
right?
my next
They're very
question. Yeah.
distracted,
Right.
Distracted by these foreign objects, and it may not be necessarily putting the energy into addressing other immune issues going on, and dysbiosis and pathogenic overload, either systemic or in the gut. And for me, I ended up being diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease because I never had this issue before. I hadn't been exposed to anything like any kind of insect bite that I think could have given me Lyme disease, but my hunch is that I already had that. It was already like an underlying infection in my body that my immune system was doing a good job keeping under control until the implants.
It seems like the implants may have exacerbated, made it worse, if you will, the Lyme disease.
Yeah, I never had any symptoms of Lyme before, but I did after I had the implants placed. And I did testing, and I tested positive, and I treated and self-treated at home, and I tested again, and it was better under control. And I actually did get better before I ever explanted because of that. But the source is still there. So how long was that going to last?
So the thought that comes into my mind is that were you even told any of this stuff prior
No.
to, because today, no matter who you are in the healthcare field, I mean, there's always, listen, if you do this, this can happen. It's rare, but it can happen, right?
Mhm.
When you got these breast implants, was there anything like that they had the warnings? Listen, you're listening to a pharmaceutical company talking about a pharmaceutical, and at the end of the commercial is, if you take this, you can get blah 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 blah. It's like there's like 50 things that they just rattle off, but this was nothing like this.
No, no. Um, I never had any disclosure or education about the possible, harm that they could bring.
Mhm.
And that's the case for, I would say, all of the women who are experiencing this issue. I don't think we would have made that choice knowing what the risk was, or at least I'd like to think that. I know I wouldn't have. But now we have gotten to a place where there have been lots of advocates going to the FDA, going to hearings, really pushing this topic and trying to make the FDA aware and look at it, pay attention to it, because there are hundreds of thousands of women impacted by this. And
Right.
so finally, as of October 2021, the FDA is requiring manufacturers for the first time to disclose the ingredients used to make the implants, and this is information that advocates have sought for a very long time.
Sure. Because
And
then,
then,
because then you can make an informed
yeah,
decision on what you want to do, right?
yeah, exactly. Then, federal regulators have also placed this so-called black box warning on breast implant packaging and told manufacturers to sell the devices only to healthcare providers who review the potential risk with
Mhm.
patients before surgery. Both the warnings and the new checklist that advises patients of the risks and
Mhm.
side effects state that breast implants have been linked to cancer of the immune system and to a host of other chronic medical conditions, including autoimmune disease and joint pain and mental
Right.
confusion and muscle aches and chronic fatigue and things like that. But how many people are seeing that black box warning? Because I never saw the packaging for my implants.
Right. Sure. Right.
You
And
know?
so back then they just weren't doing anything like that to begin with anyway. So you wouldn't see that. So being a chiropractor, being somebody who has a master's in nutrition, I like to see things. I like to have data in front of me. There's a herniated disc. Your triglycerides are 800. What do I do now?
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like there's a test that you
No.
can even think about to do this. So it kind of convolutes it more, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's no definitive test available. I will say this may be helpful information, and I don't know that I would have ever gone down this path because I
Mhm.
also don't like to expose myself to additional toxic compounds. But there is
Mhm.
another option. The option is breast MRI with contrast. The contrast is the important part. So
Mhm.
a doctor out of, I want to say, Spain, if I can remember correctly, Eduardo Fleury. He has a very long name. I'm just going to say first and last.
Kind of like Cardalicchio.
Yeah.
It's a long name.
So he created this criteria to diagnose breast implant illness, and it's called SIGBIC. That's the term he gives it, which is silicone-induced granuloma of the breast implant capsule. And that is what is being looked for with the MRI with
Mhm.
contrast.
Mhm.
So there's a few different criteria that radiologists are looking for that indicate gel bleed is happening. And so basically they did some studies around this. There were no false positives in the study that he did. And so he does, try to educate other people about this as an option for someone if they're on the fence or like really want to see the evidence that their breast implants could be a problem, is doing this imaging. And
Mhm.
there isn't anyone out there that I know of yet besides him that can read them.
Mhm.
That's the other the other aspect of it is, so even if you get it, who's going to read it for you?
Yeah.
And so he may, I don't know at this time if he's still doing this, but he may, if you were to send it to him, be able to read it for you. But
Mhm.
I'm unsure, if that's still an option. But hopefully in the near future, there will be some more education on the topic, and that could become a tool.
Right.
So far, I don't know of anyone in the US who can interpret these MRIs. So, you could reach out to him. His website is breastillness.com. He's got a lot of information there, and he's a great advocate for breast implant illness. And I think that's a good option if you're someone who just like needs to see it.
Right.
My preference is to rely on intuition. I had a gut instinct about this, and I didn't listen to it.
Right. Isn't
I
that
don't.
always the way though, Sarah? Right?
It
Isn't that the
is.
way in life? No matter what it is, you're like sitting there and you're saying to yourself, I don't know, I really shouldn't do this. This is not something that I want to do. But you know what? I'm here. I'm getting I'm on the gurney and I'm getting wheeled in. All right, let's go for it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And had I listened to that instinct in the beginning, I don't know. I mean, who knows if I'd be in a different place than where I ended up? I probably would have. And so I am not regretful that it took me it took me 5 years to decide to explant. So this
So
whole
you were
process,
having these symptoms 6 months post surgery,
yeah,
and now 4.5 years later, because you're just kind of figuring this out now, right?
yeah,
And oh geez, what was that
I
moment
know.
in time where you just sat there and you said, okay, they're coming out?
Yeah, that's another really personal and happy to share part of the story. So for me, it really I wanted to do everything I possibly could to see if I could heal my body or,
Hmm.
address whatever underlying causes were there besides the implants.
Hmm.
Because at that point, I really wanted to keep them. I didn't
Hmm.
want to give them up. So I tried my best. I did everything I possibly could. I worked with some really amazing doctors on top of just treating myself. Um, and I did get better. I got about 50% better, and
Hmm.
that wasn't enough for me. I
It's
wasn't
not good
willing to
enough.
live
It's
the
not good
rest of my
enough
life.
because you
Yeah,
you reach
at
that point where you're
50%.
just all over the place.
Yeah,
I want to go back to where I was prior, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I had developed stage 4 endometriosis on top of it all. I had bowel involvement. I had my left fallopian tube was blocked. It was all over my cervix.
Hmm.
And so I ended up having excision surgery to remove all of that. And that's fast forwarding a bit. So I decided once I discovered that, I kind of knew I had this intuition that I had endometriosis based on a lot of my symptoms. And when I discovered, I had the evidence finally, I actually did have an MRI with no contrast.
Hmm.
Thank goodness. They were able to see it. It was that bad. They could finally see it and
Hmm.
diagnose it and then create a plan. And I
Hmm.
decided, you know what? I need to explant before I have this surgery because I don't want to go through all of this pain and trauma for my body. If a source is still present, and I knew in my heart they were a source of chronic stress and toxic overload on the body, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
got to
yeah.
this point, and I was still thinking in my mind and heart about it all. I wasn't even decided at that point, but we had been trying to get pregnant for 2 years and had not been successful,
Hmm.
and it just broke me.
Hmm.
And it broke me to a point where
Right.
it was the deciding factor.
Yeah.
It was the thing that pushed me into finally stepping outside of myself,
Right.
and seeing what the more important things in life, beyond just what I looked like and
Hmm.
my confidence about my body and all of that.
Hmm.
So, I was on my knees more often than not, why? Why is this happening to me?
Right. Sure.
And that was, I mean, the biggest goal in life for me is to be a mom,
Right. And
and
you
so
didn't
I,
want your child to go through this because all of this stuff is happening in your body. And it's probably very difficult to get pregnant to begin with when you have this
oh
toxic
yeah,
overload anyway. You
oh
and I
yeah,
know that, and we'll
oh
discuss
yeah,
that because we have to have you
absolutely.
come back on because this is just a fascinating conversation. And again, thank you for being vulnerable and telling us your your path, because I think it's
Of
very
course.
important for individuals to have that path and
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
understand what's going on. It's really extremely important.
Yeah.
So, you want to have a family, and now you don't want to, you don't want your child to go through what you're going through.
Right.
As a healthcare provider, scientist, you're like, something's just not right with me. And, the baby's going to be bathing in all of this chemical
Exactly.
toxic soup, if you
Hmm.
will,
Yeah.
because back in the day, they said to my mother, "Oh, don't worry, you can smoke up into the whatever month it was, and it's
Right.
not going to affect them."
Yeah.
So my mother looks at me and says, "I know why you were the way you are, because I smoked." I said, "Well, you did it to me, Mom. It's your fault." So now, of course, we know that you shouldn't smoke at all for any given reason, no matter what that is, because it's just not healthy for it.
Yeah.
So that's
Absolutely.
always, children are always a motivating force, Sarah, right?
Yeah, yeah. I just knew like if these implants are contributing to my issues in this way, I would I would not be able to forgive myself if I did end up getting pregnant and I was, contributing to health issues for my child, you know. And at this point it was kind of like a knowing rather than a I wonder if this could be an issue. So I finally listened to that instinct. I within a few months I had explanted at that point. Once I decided, I did it. There was no hesitation. I was very happy about that decision. I have no regrets whatsoever. And regardless of whether, God blesses us with a child at some point, it doesn't change the fact that I'm still very, very glad that I made that decision. And
Sure.
I know I've done everything I possibly can.
Right. To help out and try to remedy the situation.
Yeah.
100%. Well, Sarah, believe it or not, we're about 50 minutes right now. We're just rocking, and I feel like we're just scratching the surface. And you and I could probably talk for the next 10 years about this. But what I'm going to suggest is that we pick up from here, and let's you and I continue on this conversation, because I think it's important. And a lot of individuals don't know the consequences of actions, and especially something like this, because this is not the first time that I've heard this, and this is not the first time that somebody has come into my office with something like this. And it's something that you need to make sure that you can take care of, because it's really that important. So um, I think we're going to pick up in a couple of weeks ago or so. If
Yeah,
you're game and you want to be
absolutely.
more vulnerable, you are the best. You are my new favorite person in the world right now, and it's all good.
Yeah, I'm
So
happy to.
yeah, that's great. And for everybody who's thinking about doing this for breast augmentation, hold off. We got more information. And, Sarah knows what she's talking about. She continued on in her education. She's a nurse. She's experienced it. So, from a personal and from clinical experience, she understands what's going on. And we're going to pick up from where we're leaving off. And all right, we know that we're going to have an explant instead of an implant. We'll pick up at the explant, and then we'll go from there, because I think
Yeah,
that's important. Sarah,
that's great.
thank you again for being on. Thank you very much for being vulnerable, because this is a very personal, situation. And I'm very humbled that that you have come on, and that you're discussing this with me. And we're motivating, educating, and inspiring individuals. So thank you very
Yeah,
much.
of course. Happy to be here. Happy to share any part of my journey. I really think that um sharing your story with people, regardless of what it is or what it's about, it is a way of blessing other people, you
Yeah.
know?
Yes, I agree with you. So where can people find you? That's the first thing but before we end, where can people find you, and they can familiarize themselves a little bit more with you? Where can they go?
So my website is reversingbreastimplantillness.com. And then I'm on Instagram, same name,
Mhm.
Reversing Breast Implant Illness, and same with Facebook and YouTube. Actually, YouTube is under my name, Sarah Phillipe. So yeah, those are all the places.
Okay, we're going to make sure that those are in the show notes, and then we're going to pick up from here, and we'll talk about the Explant Reset program. And I know that you have other things that are going on that I think are very important. So we're going to make sure we delve into that and we can discuss all of that. So this will all be in the show notes. So I want to thank everybody for listening. Thank you for growing the podcast. And as you can see, it's very easy to see why this podcast grows, because we have the best of the best of the best on. And Sarah is just something, phenomenal, where she's just sharing everything. So I want to thank everybody for listening in. Part 2 coming up. We're going to set it up right after this. Sarah, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for listening in. Until the next time, live your best life. Take care.